Hey, what's up y'all, this is Charlie. On today's episode I'm going to be showing you how to make my delicious oxtails smothered in gravy over rice. This recipe calls for about 6 to 8 servings. It's simple, easy, flavorful, absolutely delicious. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, here's all you'll need to make your oxtails smothered in gravy over rice. Let's get started with our ingredients. You'll need 4 pounds of oxtails, better than bouillon beef base, all-purpose flour. Now this next ingredient is optional, vegetable or canola oil. Now if your oxtails have a lot of fat on it, you're going to omit the vegetable or canola oil. But if your oxtails have little to no fat on them, then you're going to need the vegetable or canola oil. Okay? And for your seasonings, you will need 1 yellow onion, celery, green bell pepper, garlic, and for your additional seasonings, you will need some salt, black pepper, Tony Chachere's Creole seasoning. Now if you don't have this, you can use the Zatarain's Creole seasoning or the Slappy Mama Cajun seasoning. You will also need some Chef Paul Prud'homme's Poetry Magic and some dried thyme. And there we have it. Alright, let's get straight to it. So I'm going to get started by chopping up half of a yellow onion. I'm going to rinse off my celery and my green bell pepper off with cold water. I'm going to chop 2 ribs of celery. I'm going to chop 1 green bell pepper. Here I have 2 cloves of garlic. I went ahead and cut them in half. Here I have a garlic press. And from there, I'm going to press the garlic. And there we go. Okay, let's get started with our oxtails. So I place the oxtails into this strainer, and I'm going to rinse the oxtails off with cold water. Okay, next I'm going to take a sharp knife, and I'm going to trim off the excess fat from the oxtails. I'm going to trim off as much fat as I possibly can. Alright, and this is how oxtails look after we finish trimming off the excess fat. I did the best I could there. And over here on the serving dish, we have the excess fat that we trimmed off from the oxtails. Now don't throw this away, as we're going to cook this and render the fat from the fat, and from there we're going to make a roux with it. Alright, we've placed our oxtails into this large bowl. Now let's add some seasoning. I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, a half a teaspoon of Tony Chachere's Creole seasoning, and a half a teaspoon of Chef Paul Prud'homme's Poetry Magic. I'm going to take my hands and I'm going to coat the seasonings onto the oxtails. Alright, that looks good. Place this into your refrigerator for about 4 hours or overnight. Preheat your fire to medium heat. Okay, let's get started with rendering our fat. So in this large saucepan, I let it get hot for about 1 to 2 minutes. Now remember the fat that we trimmed off from our oxtails. We're going to add that in there. Going to give this a quick stir. Let this saute for about 12 to 15 minutes. And you want to keep in mind that frying times vary depending on how much fat you have, your pan, and your stove. And as the fat cooks, the oil will separate from the fat, like how you see here. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn my fire off. Now you're going to let this cool for about 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, here I have a mesh strainer with a medium-sized bowl underneath it. And here is the cooked fat with the pan drippings, of course. And from there, you're just going to add it into the mesh strainer. And once done, you should have about 1/3 cup of this rendered fat. Alright, let's get started with making our beef base mixture. So in this medium-sized bowl, I'm going to add 7.5 cups of hot water. And to that, I'm going to add 2 to 3 teaspoons of the better than bouillon beef base. I'm going to take my whisk and stir all the ingredients until that beef base has dissolved into the water. Preheat your fire to medium heat. Alright, let's get started with searing our oxtails. So in this large saucepan, I just have a very light coating of the fat that we rendered from the fat that we trimmed off from our oxtails. Add your oxtails into the saucepan. Let this sear for about 3 to 4 minutes on each side. And once you sear the oxtails on all sides, you're going to place them onto the serving plate. And from there, you're going to set the plate on the side until you're ready to cook the oxtails. Now let's deglaze the saucepan. Remember that beef base that we made not too long ago? We're going to pour that right on in there. And from there, I'm just going to take a spatula and just give this a quick stir. Now, as I'm stirring, I'm gliding the spatula along the bottom of the saucepan to get all those drippings from the bottom of the saucepan. And my fire is still preheated to medium heat, by the way. And from there, I'm just going to let this simmer for about 10 minutes, stirring occasionally. Now, I'm going to go ahead and turn my fire off. Here I have a mesh strainer with a medium-sized bowl underneath it. I'm going to pour the beef base mixture right into the mesh strainer. And whatever contents that they have left over in the mesh strainer, just little bits and pieces, you can discard that. And from there, the beef base is ready. So I'm just give this a quick stir. Preheat your fire to medium heat. Alright, let's get started with making our roux. So in this large saucepan, and I let it get hot for about 1 to 2 minutes. Now remember our pan juices from our fat that we trimmed from our oxtails. That's 1/3 cup of that. We're going to add that in there. I'm going to let this get hot for about 1 minute. Next, I'm going to add 1/3 cup of all-purpose flour. And I'm going to take a wooden spatula and give this a quick stir. And I'm going to stir this continuously for about 5 to 6 minutes, or until the roux turns into a brown color, like how you see here. Now let's add some seasoning. Add 1 1/4 cups of chopped yellow onion, 2/3 cup of chopped celery, and 2/3 cup of chopped green bell pepper. Stir all your ingredients together. Let this saute for about 5 minutes, stirring occasionally. Alright, it's been about 5 minutes now. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn my fire off. Preheat your fire to medium heat. Alright, let's get started with assembling our smothered oxtails. So in this large 8-quart pot, I let it get hot for about 1 to 2 minutes. Now remember the roux with the sauté seasonings that we sauteed in the large saucepan. We're going to add that into the large pot. Next, you're going to add your beef base mixture. Now let's add some seasonings. You're going to add your 2 cloves of pressed garlic, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, a 1/2 teaspoon of Tony Chachere's Creole seasoning, 1 teaspoon of Chef Paul Prudhomme's Poetry Magic, and a 1/2 teaspoon of dried thyme. Stir all your ingredients together. Add your oxtails. Whatever pan juices they got left on the plate, just add that all in there. That ain't nothing but good flavor. Stir all your ingredients together. Now I'm going to cover this. Once the mixture starts to simmer, you're going to turn your fire down from medium to medium-low heat. Now you want to keep in mind that cooking times vary depending on the size of the oxtails, your pot, and your setting on your stove. Let this simmer for 2 hours and 45 minutes, stirring occasionally. Alright, it's been about 2 hours and 45 minutes now. Now you'll want to make sure that you check your oxtails to make sure that they are nice and tender. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn my fire off. Now for some quick tips. The gravy will thicken as it cools. And for best results, You can serve this the very next day so that way the flavors can settle and increase overnight. Okay, here's another quick tip for you. Here I have the pot of oxtails. I placed this into my refrigerator overnight. And as you can see here along the top, there's this layer of fat. And that comes from when we cook the oxtail. So next I'm going to take a sharp serrated knife and I'm just going to make some incisions along the top of the fat. And from there I'm going to take a fork and I'm just going to take that fat. And from there I'm going to place it into this small container here. And that way, once you remove all the fat, you've removed most of the fat from the overall dish. So that way you cut the fat, not the flavor. And as for all that fat, you can just store it in a small container and you could use it for another dish. And this is how it looks after I finish from heating it up again. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Oxtails smothered in gravy over rice, made by a New Orleans native. You can find this recipe by clicking on the link in the description box or go to www.charliethecookandrews.com. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter under the name Charlie the Cook Andrews. Now it's time to go eat and take a bite. Got some of the gravy and rice first. Ooh, ooh. And for the oxtail. Yes. Oh, this dish is so flavorful. You have the wonderful flavor of the oxtails with a hint of that beef base. It's not overpowering out. It's just the right amount. And also the oxtails are nice and tender, not to where they're completely falling off the bone. You can actually take the oxtail, pick it up, and it still maintains its shape. Yet it's tender. You can pull the meat off the bone without the meat falling off the bone. Really good. So give the recipe a try. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, have a good one. Peace.